How we doing, guys? Welcome to the monthly Patreon Q&A. This is where I'm going to be answering questions that I got directly from people in the silver tier or higher in the Breath Club. You get to ask me any question you like. You get to ask me to talk about whatever I like, or whatever you like. I guess you could tell me to talk about whatever I like, and I'd be happy to do that as well. I tend to do that anyway. But this is all about answering your questions and talking about whatever topics you would like me to talk about. Today we've got 3 questions. So we didn't get a lot of questions this month, but that's okay because today that may give us a little bit more time to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about if you're tuning in. So check in, click that like button and let me know where you're coming from. Where are you from? Where are you tuning in from? Today I'm enjoying this part of the day. This is kind of my relaxed part of the day. It is a rainy, nasty looking day outside. So I'm just kind of enjoying this. I've been working hard this morning, doing a lot of videos and doing even some exercise, getting these guns. I'm glad you're here. Diash, good evening. Old Bean? Call me an old bean? I don't even know what that means. How the do are you? You're speaking English. I only know American English. Anyway, it's good to have you, Deb. And it's good to have you guys tuning in. Today, we're going to be answering three different questions. One from Gerald, and one from Nina, and one from M. Just EM is all this person gave me. So I'll be answering those questions. If you're not a part of the Breath Club, I would like to take this moment to, first of all, thank everyone in the Breath Club tribe for being a part of this club. This is a thing that started back in 2020. And guess why? Oh my God, as a breath worker, as a man who goes around and I lead experiences, I lead workshops, education about how to use your breathing to improve your health. Well, guess what happened in 2020 that made it so that I was like, I had to cancel everything. And so I started this Patreon club and it's grown and there's people from everywhere around the world. And the beauty is right now, this month, and actually we're going to do it again next month, we're going to have a new challenge. But this month we've been doing the heart resonance frequency breathing challenge. So we have been doing the same session every single day, checking in. Maybe not everybody's been doing it every single day. Maybe we're not always all checking in, but I got to say, this has been probably one of the more consistent ones. I got some of you guys checking in on different places, checking in with me personally sometimes. That's okay too. But the goal here is to check in regularly so we can give each other encouragement, so we can help each other continue to reach our goals, which is getting this done every single day. All right, let's see here. Let's see. There's my microphone. Check. It's not looking. I don't see the things dancing, but I think you can hear me, right? Check. I can hear myself. Let's see. Somebody help me out. Let me know, because it would certainly be awful. Okay, thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. It would be awful if I went through the entire thing. I did that actually recently. So I'm going to show you something, and then we'll get into the questions in just a second. So I am in the process of testing a device. This is a special kind of shirt. Okay. And I'll be revealing more about this later, but this is a special kind of shirt that you can wear, and it will tell you about the depth of breathing, rate of breathing, how your breath correlates to your heart rate variability, all these cool things. I did a whole review. I was like, man, the lighting was perfect. I even said a few clever things. I was really proud of how I phrased things. And then I was in Sand Valley at the Elemental Wellness Retreat. It was let's see, that was just it wasn't this last weekend, but it was the weekend before. So I had this beautiful backdrop, and then I came home and come to find out the microphone was turned off the entire time. So I have a whole bunch of just me lip syncing a review of a device. So I've been redoing some of those videos today. Anyway, so If you have further questions, you can always check in with the Breath Club here in the next hour. So now it's the 1 o'clock hour on the Eastern time zone here in the United States. I know everybody, we're logging in from different time zones, but it's the 1 o'clock hour. On our next hour, so after this hour, is the Breath Club Breath Party. So that's where we get together. I guide you through breath work. And I got to say, I found a track today. I found a track that I think we're going to have just an amazing time. So prepare for insanely deep breath work today. I'm in a mood. It's time. And if you liked, so if you're in the Breath Club, you know that I dropped the new breath sessions just yesterday. And if you're in that club and you liked Over the Moon, we're going to do something a lot like that today. So when you join the Breath Club, you get access to my full catalog of over, I think it's like 150 specifically written breathwork sessions. So I write something new every month, and these are using all kinds of different techniques, and they're all curated for a perfect experience. I've been writing my own music lately. I don't know if anyone has noticed, and if you like it, tell me. If you don't, let me know. Let me know. I don't want to ruin your experience. Anyway, let's get to the questions today. Let's talk breath work. Join the Breath Club. If you haven't joined the Breath Club, I think I have the link below. If not, just go to my landing page, click on the Patreon symbol, and you can join us in the next hour at the Breath Party. All right. So Gerald, he brought a question to me, and he says, what is contrast therapy? And is it better than cold therapy by itself? Now, he's referring to a lot of people that saw some of the videos and the pictures that I was posting from the Elemental Wellness Retreat. So just to give you a little bit of background, at the Elemental Wellness Retreat, we go out in the middle of nowhere in the state of Wisconsin. So for those of you who don't know the United States, I mean, it's just kind of like Wisconsin it gets very cold in the wintertime. And the temperatures there, okay, Fahrenheit, okay, so you can get to the negative temperatures pretty quickly in the wintertime Celsius, but when you're in the negatives Fahrenheit, you've really gotten somewhere. So we were negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and for my non-Fahrenheit speakers, okay, I'm just going to look that up for you. So let's see here. Negative 15 Fahrenheit in Celsius would be negative 26.111. You know how nothing corresponds. Some people get on the United States for our love of Fahrenheit. I don't know. It's that we love it. It's just what we were taught when we were kids. I'm not going to sit here and say, though, like a lot of Americans were like, oh, we're so stupid for using Fahrenheit. I don't think either one of them is like, oh, well, of course, this is the best way to do it. The argument I always see, and I'm going to get into this question, but now I'm off on a tangent. We're just having some fun. The thing is, the argument I always see for Celsius, you got water, it freezes at 0 and it boils at 100. Boom. And you know what? Water will freeze at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And you know what temperature it boils at? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, because we never actually have to know what temperature it is whenever water boils. So I don't, both of them are completely arbitrary measurements of how much energy is in the air or water or whatever. But I will say this, it sure helps that it makes it more confusing. So it's anyway, I've gotten off my soapbox. Purely arbitrary. Now, if you are going to talk about the metric system versus the imperial system, okay, you got me. There is no good reason why a foot should be a foot, or I will say my foot is a foot long. So it's like, I guess I grew into the right size. Okay, back to the actual question. Gerald, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. He asked, okay, so I saw you do the contrast therapy. He gave me some preamble, but his basic question was, what is contrast therapy, and is it better than cold therapy by itself? So, first of all, contrast therapy is generally when you combine sauna with some form of cold therapy. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a dry sauna, it can be a steam bath, it can be, it doesn't even have to be sauna, it can be a hot tub. It can be as simple as going between a incredibly hot shower and an incredibly cold shower. All that contrast therapy is ultimately going between two temperatures, very hot and very cold. And there are benefits to doing both separately. So if you do sauna, you are releasing heat shock proteins, you're increasing your metabolism, you're able to ramp up your sympathetic nervous system, and there's a lot of benefits to doing that. Also, one thing that generally happens in both, and the thing is, both, I'll say the thing that they both have in common, okay, because you can list all these benefits, list all the things that they're doing, but ultimately, for the most part, you are mimicking exercise. So both heat and cold training mimic exercise. And this is one of the reasons why we feel so good. This is one of the reasons why you will have these intense reactions. What's interesting, I find, is that heat and cold both activate the sympathetic nervous system. So whenever you get into the sauna, whenever you get into an ice bath, in both cases, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. Now, this is an interesting thing. When you get into an ice bath, okay, so anytime you hear about someone activating the sympathetic nervous system, you usually think, okay, is their heart rate going to go up or is their heart rate going to go down? Which do you think, right? For most of us, when we think about the sympathetic nervous system, and maybe you're like, dude, I don't even know what the sympathetic nervous system is. Okay, let me help you out. So the sympathetic nervous system is the part of our autonomic nervous system that is generally in charge of putting us in an action state. So it's generally going to make it so that we have more energy and so that we're able to attack, we're able to run. Fight or flight is when we're in an incredibly heightened state of sympathetic arousal. Right now, I would say I'm in a sympathetic state. Even though I'm maybe not incredibly in a sympathetic state, it's because I'm excited, right? A lot of times we oversimplify. Okay, you're either fight or flight, or you are rest and digest. It's this like teeter totter. It's like almost like this. What is this binary code? It's like a 0 and a 1. You're either one or the other. It's not really like that. The autonomic nervous system is kind of it overlaps, and there's slopes and there's curves. And right now, I would say, there are certainly aspects here in the United States. It's about 1:15. I ate lunch about 11:30. I have an early lunch. So I'm sure there's parts of my autonomic nervous system still taking care of digestion. But because I'm so excited to talk, then I know that I've got a little bit more energy. And hey, my autonomic nervous system is taking care of me there as well. These are all unconscious processes. We talk about it in the language of breath. But coming back to my question of when you get into a sympathetic dominant state, so an active state, typically we see heart rate increase. Okay, so this would be if you're afraid or if you're incredibly happy and you're running toward something good, or if you're running away from something bad, or if you're just exercising or dancing, your heart rate is going to increase whenever you exercise, all these things. And that is because the sympathetic nervous system says, okay, we need to circulate blood more frequently and we need to oxygenate our tissues. All right, let's increase heart rate. If you're a runner, you've done this before, probably trying to make sure you're in the cardio zone. So a lot of people are surprised to hear that when you get into a cold exposure, whenever you get into an ice bath, a cold shower, typically some people, you might notice a little bit of a heart rate spike, like initially, like when you first feel the cold. This is because your hypothalamus is trying to help you and trying to keep you alive, is trying to get you out of the cold, but it will quickly change. And what happens is your blood pressure will go up. So your blood pressure goes up. And why does the blood pressure go up whenever you're in a cold exposure? Well, that is because your heart rate is coming down. And so blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes down, even though you're in a sympathetic dominant state. And the reason for that is because all of the blood is starting to be pushed to your core. Your autonomic nervous system understands, if I keep all the blood on the surface, as it circulates, I am going to become more susceptible to hypothermia. And so I need to preserve the heat. So move all the blood to the core. And when you do that, the pressure goes up because all this vascular on your surface is constricted, right? And so the heart rate will go down because you don't have to pump it through as many places, and the blood pressure goes up because you are pushing it all in the middle. So you have a bigger biomass of heat. So when you get into a cold exposure, and this is actually why more heart attacks happen whenever there are quick cold snaps in the weather. A lot of people this is the thing. And we only have 3 questions today, so I'm just going to go really deep as I can on these, and I'm excited to talk to you about this. A lot of people look at cold exposure or heat exposure as good for you, right? Hey, and whenever I talk to my 8-year-old, I say a little bit of cold exposure is good for you. It makes you stronger. And so there's a little thing that me and him have, right? And so whenever he says, "Oh, daddy, it's cold," I'm like, well, a little bit of cold makes you stronger. And it's not just me being, some kind of a jerk. It's me saying, hey, a little bit of cold exposure will make you stronger. Now, here's the thing. If you are already on the brink of a heart attack and there's a cold snap, studies show that there's a lot more heart attacks when cold snaps happen in an area. And that is because of this very reason. You have this vasoconstriction that happens, and the blood pressure goes up and the heart rate goes down. And this can cause problems. And so people might say, well, wait a minute, I thought cold training was good for you. It is, but it's not that simple as something is good for you or not good for you. In general, most of the time, it comes down to the details. And the only way you can make cold exposure good for you, and the only way you can make heat exposure good for you, okay? Either one of these things, the only way they can be good for you is if you give yourself the appropriate amount of stimulus and the appropriate amount of recovery. If you don't have those 2 things in there, the appropriate amount of stimulus, appropriate amount of recovery, it's bad for you. Or at least it's inert. It has no effect because it's not the cold that makes it happen. And this is something that a lot of people who are very educated misunderstand. I trained thousands of people over the years in cold training specifically, and now I'm training more people in sauna as well. And I remember I had this doctor, and this doctor had been with a doctor for decades. Okay, this person was a seasoned medical professional who came to me talking about, well, because I went to your workshop, I was under the impression that just being cold was good. And so I was just cold all the time. And man, I just really started hating life, and I didn't feel any better. I actually felt worse. Well, of course you're going to feel worse because cold is not necessarily good for you. Okay. The cold exposure and heat exposure that we're doing are part of the hormetic process. And if you trace back the process, like the science of what hormesis is, we started the whole science of it based off of our observations that a little bit of poison, just the right amount of poison with the right amount of recovery, would make a organism stronger and more resilient. It wasn't that we're like, hey, poison's good for you. Cold is the poison. Heat is the poison here, okay? And no one seems to want to talk about this. People just want to say, just get out in the cold. And I will tell you this, that has led me to many times where I've almost had hypothermia. In my early training, especially with the bravado and the kind of the carefree nature of the people that are in the cold training world, and the leaders and the voices that I listened to back in the early days, and we're talking 2014, 2015, 2016, even 2017, even probably 2018, they had this whole like, just go for it, don't listen to the fear and all these things. And while cold training and heat training are awesome for mitigating, like saying, okay, this is an uncomfortable thing, I'm going to face it under my own terms, and a great way to overcome a lot of the fear that comes with these things, it's also important to understand the complexity. So I just wanted to go through all of that, okay, to get to the point where I'm answering this question. What is contrast training, and is it better than cold itself? First of all, contrast training is just introducing two opposing stressors. Okay, you're stressing yourself with the heat, you're stressing yourself with the cold. Both of them, though, okay, even though we talk about relaxing in a sauna, you have to understand the sauna itself is also stimulating your sympathetic nervous system. So in both of these cases, the cold and the heat are sympathetic stressors. So they're, in both cases, we're stressing ourselves. So you're going from one stressor to another stressor, back and forth. And so in both cases, you're getting a lot of the same things, like basically inducing all the basics of, how many times can I say basic? I'm so basic. But what you're doing is you're inducing hormetic stressors that mimic exercise. So you're ramping your heart rate up, your heart rate and your blood pressure go up, or your heart rate and your heart rate goes down in the cold, blood pressure goes up in the cold. You go to the heat, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes down. Okay, so you're going back and forth between these two things, right? So you're opening up blood vessels, closing the blood vessels. You're getting cardiovascular exercise as a result. You're getting body hardening, and what that ultimately means is that you're training your skin to either vasoconstrict or vasodilate, right? So when we do that, there's these tiny little smooth muscles that are all over our skin, and they generally don't get a lot of exercise because we are in pretty homogeneous temperatures. Most people are, you're just in room temperature all day. So adding that stressor on both ends opens and closes those capillaries on your skin. And what that does, that in itself is not necessarily the biggest reason why you're getting the cardiovascular exercise. You are getting some of those benefits as a result of that. But what it also does is it makes you far more, it improves your physical ability to thermoregulate. And that is a powerful thing. One of the benefits of cold training is a increase in thermoregulation. You have to understand thermoregulation has a direct impact on your immune system. And one of the reasons why cold training is so good for your immune system, yes, we can point to all of the increases in white blood cells, T cells, and all these other things. But ultimately, what makes viruses able to replicate is when your body temperature is low. So this is why in the wintertime, you want to breathe in and out through your nose, because we want to keep this nice and warm. But we also want to keep everything nice and warm. And heat generally causes enveloped viruses such as coronaviruses or rhinoviruses. It makes them unable to replicate. And this, your physiology knows this, because when it gets dire straits, it says, okay, crank up the temperature, crank up the heat. You give yourself a temperature. That's an unconscious process, but there's a wisdom behind it, because you deep down, and it's still you. I always want to make sure you don't think that you're just the conscious part of you and the rest of you isn't you either. The unconscious part of you is you. And that part of you understands a virus cannot replicate if it's too hot. The envelope of a virus, which is its protective shell, will melt and make it inert, and it can't replicate anymore. That's why a fever is a fever. And we can also get a lot of those benefits when we go into the sauna. So contrast therapy, coming back to Gerald's question, that is what contrast therapy is. It is purposefully going between hot and cold, back and forth, and getting the benefits of both. a lot of people in the cold training community, because the cold training community is full of a lot of novices, right? And I was once there, and I'm not like judging, but a lot of people get into this whole thing where they feel like you have to, if you're really going to get the most out of cold training, you have to sit there and let your body naturally warm up on its own. There's a lot of wisdom to that. And I'm not saying you're wrong in saying that that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. And so some people are like, no, you shouldn't go back and forth between the sauna and the cold. That's not true either. And for many people, especially early on, I would recommend, if you're having trouble getting into a cold training practice, start in the heat. Go to the sauna or exercise. Okay. Get warmed up before you get into the cold. All right. That a lot of people, oh no, that's cheating or whatever. Who's keeping score here? Right. There's so many like weird things that people will bring to this thing. If you go in a little bit warm or if you go in a little hot, the most important thing to understand is there will be a change in blood pressure. Okay. So if you go and for your very first ever ice bath and you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, don't do high intensity interval training and then go into an ice bath, because you're raising your blood pressure and your heart rate. And then you're going to get into an ice bath and the blood pressure is going to go up and the heart rate's going to go down. Like there's things that's why you need a coach. But as long as you're a healthy person, hey, go to the gym, get a good workout in, and then take a cold shower. See how it feels after you're a little bit warmer. Or, hey, if you have access to a sauna, go into the sauna. And there's going to come a time whenever you're like, you know what? I think a cold shower would sound pretty good right now. That's great. Go into the cold shower. We always end on cold. Okay. And so this, of course, is not just because we want to get the benefits of allowing our physiology to rewarm on its own, but we also end on cold because we want to try to return all the blood back to the core and let it come back nice and smoothly. We don't want any kind of blood pooling, and sometimes that can occur. So we always end on cold whenever we do contrast training. And so to the last part of your question, Gerald, and thank you again for being in this tier, in the silver or above tier in our Patreon club. To the last part of your question, is it better than cold training by itself? I like it better than cold training by itself, but at the same time, not everyone has access to a sauna or a steam room or a hot tub. We all generally have access to a hot shower. So you can go hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And when you do that, you're opening and closing. You're getting a lot of the same benefits of doing a sauna, an ice bath, sauna, an ice bath. It's just you're not getting the intensity. Is it better? It's a difficult thing because so oftentimes we oversimplify things. For some people, personally, I like it better. Is it better? I would say there are benefits to both, but if you can do contrast training rather than just cold training, I would recommend doing that. You're getting a lot of those heat shock proteins, a lot of the benefits, a lot of the things, the benefits of opening as wide as you can the pores and all the capillaries, and then closing them as hard as you can with that cold shock, right? You're getting both. And so that's why I would recommend that. Slayer is here. Slayer, I can't wait to see you on our breathwork session. Today's breathwork session is going to be extra deep today. So my buddy James and we did the Elemental Wellness Retreat a weekend or so ago. And he's got this playlist that I'm just going to use his playlist. It's just awesome. So I think you're going to love it. And guten Tag, mein Freund. All right. So thank you so much, Gerald, for that question. I hope that answers your question. That is what contrast therapy is. And that is why I don't like to say one is better than the other, because I think we oversimplify things, but I like it better. I like contrast therapy better than just cold training by itself. It's not something that everyone has available to them. All right. Next question. I'm drinking mango. Mango. Do you guys remember Mango from Saturday Night Live? Hey guys, if you don't mind, hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And if you haven't joined the Breath Club, check out the Breath Club. Dana, I'm manga. It was so, I mean, the 90s were a crazy time. Was it, that was the 90s or was that the early 2000s? I forget. Sometimes it's a blur. But anyway, if you haven't joined the Breath Club, join the Breath Club. We're about to do a breathwork session in about 30 minutes. And I can't wait to see you guys. Okay, it's the 90s. The 90s, crazy, crazy, crazy times. Okay, Nina asks, why is hyperventilation breath work not good for pregnant women? Okay, so whenever you join the Breath Club, you're going to notice that many of my sessions have a warning. This session is not appropriate for people with epilepsy in many cases, or this session is not appropriate for people who are pregnant. And so this is because certain breathwork sessions, especially those that include hyperventilation, they ramp up the sympathetic nervous system in some cases. Now, in my breathwork sessions, especially the ones that I have recorded, because if I'm going to do anything that I have any qualms about, any kind of like there's any possibility for a danger, I generally am going to make, if it's recorded, I'm not going to share something that would likely be misused, but I'm extremely safe. I want to make sure that people always benefit. My biggest hope is that I do no harm. So I put these warnings on the breath sessions, and this is what Nina is talking about. And there was, okay, why is it that it's not helpful or whether that's not good for pregnant women? And the reason for that is anytime we ramp up the SNS or the sympathetic nervous system, we're releasing a lot of stress hormones, and we're also the stress of the mother can influence the stress of the child. And so what I am just always so much on the safe side that I'm the type of person I say, just don't even worry about it. Now, other breath workers might not be so concerned about it. And it's possible, hey, maybe I'm being too safe, but I would rather be too safe than not safe enough. And when it comes to the safety of my clients, I would rather a person have to skip that session. There's a lot of other sessions that are great for people who are pregnant. And I'm so happy that, if you're pregnant, I'm so happy that you're in the group. I have had in the past few years, of course, we've had about 4 years of the Breath Club. What? I guess in March, it'll be our 4th year anniversary. March or April, I think, is whenever I started in 2020. Maybe we need to have like some kind of an extra celebration. 4 years. That's pretty big, right? Anyway, so when it comes to pregnancy, that's why I'm extra safe. And I've been on retreats before where I am not the person leading the retreat. I have worked for people who have not had this as a safety measure. And, I'm a little bit like, come on, we need to say something, but not everybody is as concerned about that. I'm just a little, maybe, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn and pat myself on the shoulder. It's just that I would rather be too safe than not safe enough. That's really the key there, Nina. I don't want to have any stress induced on your unborn child. And, there is some research that shows that when women go through incredibly stressful times, some of that is transferred on to their child, and I don't want any of that. I don't want to, you can wait. And there are other techniques and sessions that you can do in our club. So do those. So thank you so much, Nina, for that question. All right. The last question. And then once we have the last question, I'm going to hang out with you guys. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about. And because we don't have our breathwork session till 2, and I'm just having a great time. And I'll tell you this much. These sessions here, like, I think I may try to do one on Friday too. I don't know. I love doing this. And the more you interact with me, the more fun I have. So thank you so much for being here. Please, if you have, let me know where you're coming from. Anyway, last question from the Breathwork Tribe. And again, these are all coming from people who are at the silver tier or higher. And this is from M. Okay, and this is a broad question. What is the best advice for young athletes? Now, I think that I'm not sure, and you can message me about this if I am wrong. This is the whole question. So first of all, Gerald and Nina both had a little bit of a preamble. Hey, this is why I'm asking the question. M just sent me this question. And so M, I think you're referring to breath work, but I'm going to go a little bit further back, okay? And just say, if you are an athlete, okay, if you are a young athlete, what are the things that you should that are going to be the best thing for you? You need to prioritize recovery. And really, you need to, because there's two big things. We're always working with stressors. We're working with hormetic stressors. So exercise is a hormetic stressor that we are inducing. So whenever you go out there, you give 100% on the field. And I know, that you are, or maybe your son or daughter is, you are inducing stress on the system. And this is great. This is awesome. And when I train athletes, I want them to go 1000%. I want them to go hard and heavy, and I want them to leave nothing on the table. But at the same time, what also normally happens is they'll give 100%. And then as soon as they get done with the game or something like that, they kind of are just like, okay, I'm just going to go about living my life. And what it's very common that I'll talk to people who they're not getting 8 hours of sleep in a night. And even if they are, they're not sleeping well. I'll talk to people who are doing, they just eat garbage, they're just eating fast food and stuff like that all the time. And when you're young, you can get away with a lot of things, or at least I don't know if it's necessarily you're getting away with a lot of things. It's this, that I think you're more oblivious to the signals that that your physiology will send back to you. And so, it's a matter of what goes in. You're wanting to fuel yourself with good building blocks so that you can have the output that you want. All right. So build the muscle, have more energy. My best advice for breath work when it comes to athletes is prioritize the breath wave. So if you're not familiar with the breath wave, of course, you can buy my books. Hey, actually, I was filming a thing. Look at this. Hey, I didn't mean to do that, but hey, it's right there. Why not? Shameless promotion. But buy my books or the course, the Language of Breath course, and we go through that in depth. Right? It's more than what I can do right here and now. Ultimately, you want to prioritize the functional breath because for two major reasons. One is that you want every breath that you take to send a signal to your nervous system, either a very strong signal for action or a very strong signal for recovery. And when we look at athletes so often, they don't send that recovery signal very well. They're really good at getting amped up and getting into the game, but whenever it comes time to go home to rest, recover, and recuperate, we don't see a huge change in their breathing. So you want to learn how to breathe for performance. So there's a way to breathe in your performance, and it's going to be dependent on the sport in many cases. And then you're going to want to learn how to breathe for recovery. So learning the difference between these two variations is key. All right. And then you're going to want to prioritize. So the second reason you're prioritizing functional breathing is because simply you want to maximize gas exchange. You want to make every breath count, as opposed to having to take 3 or 4 breaths for every one breath that a functional breather might have to take. So you're wanting to prioritize function, and that's for two big reasons. The other things I would focus on, a lot of people want to do the hyperventilative breath work, the Wim Hof method, the long breath holds and things like that. There's like a lot of variations. Basically, all of those are there. They all come from Bhastrika Kumbhaka Pranayama, right? I want to do circular breathing, have a long breath hold. And there are some benefits to that. And those are good things to do. I would say the biggest reason why those are good to do is to help with the stress, okay? Because athletes tend to carry a lot of stress and this reduces their ability to recover. I would say that ideally, what you're going to want to do is focus on heart rate variability. So, any kind of breath work that leads to better heart rate variability, because that's going to improve your resilience to all stressors. And then you're going to want to focus on CO2 tolerance training. Again, that's going to improve your tolerance to all stressors. In addition to that, CO2 tolerance training generally is going to allow you to have better oxygenation to all of your tissues, giving you the ability to go longer for stronger and delay the shift from the aerobic zone to the anaerobic zone. You have to understand that we human beings have three energy pathways. And the first one is, I mean, we use creatine for that, and it's just like over in about a few seconds. Okay. Those are your heavy lifts, the things that are just like really, really power lifting in a way, like heavy jumping, heavy lifting. We also have the aerobic zone, and that's what we're in right now if you're just sitting down, unless you're on a run or something like that. So we want to really improve the ability of that aerobic zone. We want to make sure that we can really maximize that, because once we get out of the aerobic zone, you got to understand the aerobic zone is that's what allows a person to run all day. That's what allows, those are the energy, that's the energy pathway that gives us endurance. The other ones, they're not great for endurance. As soon as you bring those online, your energy expenditure, your time is very limited. So once you become anaerobic, then your time is limited and you only have a set number of repetitions, a set number of a very limited amount of time that you can use that energy pathway. The beauty is, if your breathing is functional, if you have a strong CO2 tolerance, and if you've been exercising and you've been recovering well, that aerobic zone is going to help you it'll help you reduce the amount of time you need to recharge the anaerobic zone. So if you are going for like sparring, or you're doing things in matches, basketball, anything where it's like you need a lot of energy and you're going into the anaerobic zone, the nice thing is, if you increase the resilience of your aerobic zone, you're going to recover much faster and you're going to get that energy pathway back. So, in review, I would say the biggest things to do is focus on sleep, focus on functional breathing, focus on eating quality foods, focus on giving 100% in the practice, and then giving 100% into recovery after practice. Give yourself some downtime. And I know a young athlete doesn't think about downtime as much as they should. And hey, you're living your life. I'm not sitting here saying that like the sport itself is not the be all end all of your life. But if you're wanting to get the most out of your athletic performance, you do need to think about, how am I shutting off? How am I turning off? And one of the things that we don't think about very often is the things like our mobile phones. They increase our dopamine levels. Dopamine is not the chemical you want in your brain if you're trying to rest, relax, and recover. So it's a matter of learning to allow yourself to be bored a little bit. Sometimes that's difficult in the world that we live in now. What's interesting though, of course, I've got an 8-year-old. And I'm bored, and I don't know how a human being in the world can be bored in this modern age. But it all depends on your own, I guess, perception. He's only been here 8 years. Becoming bored is interesting because in order to rest and actually recover, your unconscious self has to believe that you're safe. If your unconscious self does not believe that you're safe, you won't be able to rest, because it's saying, hey, now's not the time to rest. Now's the time to run. Now's the time to fight, right? So to be bored is actually a very recuperative state, because boredom is extreme safety. right? If you think about the opposite of boredom, there's a lot of variety. When a person gets bored of something, it's, oh, the same thing happens all the time. You can predict every second because nothing's changing. You're just bored of it. But that in itself is a very safe place. And oftentimes our complaints about boredom are because we're swimming in a sea of dopamine. And people are like, well, dopamine's good, right? Well, dopamine has a function, and this is where it comes down to everybody. This is the thing. I think 80% of my struggles whenever I train clients, and I love my clients. I'm not complaining about being a coach because I love my clients and we have fun. But I think the hurdle that I have to overcome, that we always overcome early, is this is good, this is bad, right? Because it always depends. Dopamine is if you have low dopamine, you're going to have low drive, right? Your drive to do anything productive is diminished if you have low dopamine. However, most of us don't have that issue. Most of us have an issue of we have very high dopamine and we're trying to skip ahead to the end. There's a certain degree of us that is that's trying to skip ahead to the end, to the thing that the dopamine is trying to make us do. So when it comes down to it, it always depends. It always depends. And so when it comes to being bored, sometimes it's okay to just kind of sit with that feeling for a little bit. Anyway, my friends, I am excited because in 15 minutes, we are going to have the monthly breath party on Zoom. So if you haven't already joined the Breath Club, take a look at the link below. We're going to get started. It's only $5 to start. Okay, that's the lowest ring, and you get access to the full catalog and our Zoom session that's coming up in just 15 minutes. I'm going to go get set up, and I would encourage you to do the same. Get comfy. Hey, V. Thomas, I see you there. Nice to see you here. But go ahead and get comfy, get ready, and prepare for a really enjoyable breath session coming up. All right, guys, I'll see you in about 15 minutes. Bye-bye.